Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Ready for Rome orientation webinar. My name is Shelley Ruel, and I'm the ItaliaPass Community Manager. And I'm joined by my colleague, Lorian Filon, who is our ItaliaPass Primo Italy Experience Specialist. And as we go through our webinar today, we'll be telling you a little bit more about ItaliaPass. And really looking forward to sharing this information with you. I've lived in Rome for over 20 years now, so I'm going to share some local tips, and we'll also be giving you some practical information about travel here to Rome. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I wanted to share with everyone a little bit about what is ItaliaPass, simply because I think a lot of you are joining us because you're customers of Italia Rail. So this is a family of brands: Italia Rail, Italia Tours, Italia Drive, and Italia Hotels. And these brands have worked with millions of tourists exploring Italy since 1987. And our CEO wanted to help his customers have the best trip to Italy ever, so he created ItaliaPass. And ItaliaPass has two types of membership. One is an online community that is free. And then there's also a Primo Benefits program, which costs $99 for a membership and brings you $500 in travel value for your travel to Italy. We'll be talking a little bit more about ItaliaPass Primo as we go through the different slides today. So this is what we're going to cover. We'll be covering, first of all, when you arrive, most of you will probably be arriving into Rome at Fiumicino Airport, which is outside of the city center. So we'll explain to you how to get into the city center from the airport. We will tell you about a benefit that we have, which is our lounge at Rome Termini train station. I'll explain to you about how the public transport works here in Rome, and also some fun stuff about eating out, restaurants, menus, some local customs around those types of things. And then we'll also give you some information about how you can get into the Colosseum on a free entry, as well as get a $100 automatic refund on a Rome or Vatican tour. I'll share some information about how to avoid some of the most common tourist traps and a couple of other local tips. And then at the end of our presentation, all of that will take roughly a half an hour, after which we'll open it up to Q&A. So that will be in the chat function under the icons where it says more. If you click on that, you'll find a Q&A function. You can type your question there at any time, and we will answer the questions up to 15 minutes. And if we don't manage to finish all the questions, I will be emailing you a summary of all the questions, and I can answer whatever remains after we finish. And just so that you're aware, this webinar is also being recorded. So if you are unable to stay for the whole time, you will be sent a link to watch the recording later. I'll be sending out an email to everyone who registered. So let's go ahead and get started. I will turn it over to my colleague, Lorian, and she will talk to you about how to get into the city from the airport.
Great. Thank you everyone again for joining us today. So once you've landed in FCO Airport, which is the main airport in Rome, you have a few options to get to the center. As you can see on the slide, they're all pretty well indicated within the terminal. So the first option that you have is to reach Rome Termini, which is the main station in Rome, by train. There are two types of trains that you can take. The first one is the Leonardo Express, which is a direct train to Termini station, and that costs $16 on Italia Rail. And the second one is to take a more local train that goes to the smaller stations in Rome, like Trastevere and Ostiense, and that costs $10 on Italia Rail. And it's very dependent on where you're going to be staying in Rome, what's most convenient for you. So both trains are considered to be regional trains. So you'll have to check in before you board the train. All of that information is in the confirmation email. I'll say that a few times so that it becomes clearer as the presentation goes on, but it's all very well indicated in the email that you receive when you book a train with us. We generally get a lot of questions of whether or not you should book your tickets ahead of time when you arrive. I would recommend to do so, especially during the high season, which is generally May to early October. That is because you want to make sure that you have enough space on the exact train that you'd like. And I would tell you to give at least about 2 hours between your landing time and your departure in Rome Termini. in the FCO airport by train, and then 3 hours to calculate between your landing time and the time of your next train that will depart from the center of Rome. So let's say you're going to Florence once you arrive, and you want to know how much time to calculate between your landing time and the time of your train from Rome to Florence. I generally advise for about 3 hours. In case of luggage delays or any issues that you might face at the airport, especially during the high season. There are also taxis that you can take outside the terminal. They have a fixed rate of 55 euros. The other options are the shuttle bus or booking a private transfer with us, which is great if you're traveling with more than 2 passengers. The driver usually waits for you at the arrival with your name, and that can be booked directly on Italia Tours, or you can go through us if you are a Primo member. The Italy Experience specialists like myself would be very happy to help you book that. So now for car rentals. That's also a question that comes up a lot, is if you should be renting a car during your trip. So if you're going to be exploring some of the more remote areas in Italy, I definitely think renting a car can be a great option. But I don't recommend renting a car if you're going to visit the major cities like Florence, Venice, Rome, and Milan. It's always best to navigate between these cities by train. It's very well, there's a lot of options and times for trains, and it's very quick. And if you're only going to be staying in these cities for a few days, it's usually the best option. But if you do decide to rent a car, you can do so on our platform, Italia Drive, which you can see here on the screen. And you'd benefit from a $10 discount as a Primo member, which you can redeem after by contacting us. And another great perk of being a Italia Pass Primo member is the access to our Italia Pass Lounge, which is located in Roma Termini train station. So let's say you have some time before or after boarding your train, or you're waiting for your hotel check-in time. It's great because you can relax in the lounge. We offer free Wi-Fi, free espresso, free refreshments, and free luggage storage. So if you have a carry-on or larger suitcases and you need a place to store your belongings, we can do that during the opening hours. The only thing you have to note is that you have to book your complimentary visit. All of that instruction is in your Primo welcome email. And if you have any issues, of course, you can contact us. What's great is also that our lounge hosts are happy to answer any questions you have about trains when you enter the lounge, so they can assist you with that. And now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some more information on public transport within the city.
Okay, thanks. So the public transport company in Rome is called ATAC, and we have 3 types of public transport here in Rome. We have buses. We have what's called the metro, that's short for metropolitana. That's our subway, our underground. It's quite simple because we only have 2 lines, the A line and the B line, and they only cross at one point, and that's Rome Termini station. That's the main train station. So it's very easy to navigate our subway system. There are also a couple of streetcar trams that run here in Rome. Oops. So let's see. So tickets are relatively inexpensive in terms of large European cities. They only cost €1.50. And the way they work is on a time limited basis. So you don't have to worry about different zones of the city like you see in other large cities here in Europe. It works where the time starts the first method of public transport that you take. So when you first board, say, a bus or the metro or a tram, then your ticket gets validated, and that's when your 100-minute time limit starts. There is one exception to that, and within that 100-minute time span, you are allowed to take 1 ride on the subway. So what that means is from the time you enter to the time you leave, that's considered your ride. So you can transfer between the A line and the B line. But once you exit the metro station after you've used that ticket for 1 ride, it's no longer good for any more subway rides, even if you have time left over. However, it's still good up to that 100-minute time limit for buses and trams. So in the metro, there's a really convenient system, and it's becoming increasingly common as well on buses. It's the tap and go system. So if you have a contactless payment system, if you have like on your smartphone, or you have a contactless credit or debit card, you can just tap the reader as you enter the turnstile, or on the bus, there will be a box that you can tap, and that counts as your ticket. It will automatically deduct $150 from your bank account that that card is connected to. The one thing to keep in mind here is that you only you have to have one card per rider. So the same payment method cannot be used for multiple riders. The reason for that is that the card itself then becomes the proof of your ticket. So if you were to be asked, for example, by an inspector on the bus, where's your ticket? If you had used tap and go, whether you had first boarded the metro and it's still time, you still have more time on that, or if you use tap and go on the bus, then you would show them your card or your contactless payment system method to show them as your ticket. Tickets are called biglietto in Italian, and you can also purchase paper tickets. So you can buy them at machines, which are predominantly in the metro stations. You generally won't find ticket machines at bus stops, but you will find them in the subway stations. But throughout the city, if you want to buy a paper ticket, you can buy those at the tabaccheria, which is the tobacconist shop. Those are very easy to identify because above the door, you'll see a sign that has a T on it. Or at newsstands, and there's lots and lots of newsstands throughout the city. So you can simply ask for a biglietto, and you can keep that on hand in case, for example, you're going to take the bus and maybe there's not the tap and go system on the bus. In the case of a paper ticket, there's a yellow box on the bus. You're going to put the ticket, you're going to insert it. It's going to grab the ticket, pull it into the machine. It'll stamp it with the time and then spit it back out. Then you just hold on to it for the rest of the ride, put it in your wallet, whatever. You don't have to validate every single time you get on the bus. Also, something useful to know is that you don't need to check in with the driver when you get on a bus. No one's going to check you. You simply board the bus. And if any inspector comes on board, then it's your responsibility to show them that ticket and to make sure that ticket is validated, because if it's not validated, you could get a fine. Next, I wanted to talk to you about a bus route that's very popular and very convenient for visitors to the city. It's bus number 64. This bus is convenient because it goes from the main train station Termini all the way across the historic center, all the way across the city to the Vatican. So it goes back and forth, and it's really convenient. However, another thing to note, because it's so convenient for visitors and tourists, is that it's also a pickpocket target. So the pickpockets know that they're going to find large crowds, less so at this time of year. If you're coming this time of year, you're going to find it's low season, so it's less crowded. However, it's still a known target for pickpockets. Now, I don't say that to scare you or worry you whatsoever. I've lived here for over 20 years, and thank goodness I've never been pickpocketed. But the reason for that is because I'm very aware of my belongings. And that's easy to do. When you get on a bus, if you're in any crowded area, if you're ever in a crowd, touristy areas, if you have a bag, put it across your body and kind of keep your hand on it. Men, keep your wallets maybe in your front pocket, not your back pocket or inside a jacket. The reason for that is that pickpockets take advantage of the crowds. They'll often use techniques like bumping, and so you won't feel it. They're extremely skilled. And so again, I don't say that to worry you. Rome is not a violent city, but it does have a petty crime problem when it comes to highly tourist areas. So simply be aware of your belongings, and you should not have anything to worry about, because there are plenty of distracted tourists that they can target, and that won't be you because you'll be watching your belongings. Next, let's talk about some fun stuff. We'll talk about all the delicious food you're going to eat when you come here to Rome. We have lots of local specialties, and I hope you're going to enjoy a lot of them. Let's talk first about restaurants. Something that not everybody knows is that we do eat a little bit later than, let's say, the typical American or Canadian dining times. We tend to eat lunch anywhere from between 1 and 1:30 would be a good lunch start time. And dinner 8 to 8:30 is generally when locals will start to go out to the restaurants. The reason I tell you that is because if you're wanting to go out to eat earlier, you may find the restaurants not open or not sitting people yet. Touristy restaurants in highly trafficked tourist areas downtown, they will probably be running all day long. But if you're wanting to go to somewhere very local, then you'll want to keep in mind that the dining times are a little bit later than you might be used to. The check, the reason I put check here, and by the way, check is called il conto, if you want to try out some Italian while you're asking for your check at the restaurant. The reason I put the check is because something that's different that people have wondered about who have visited and asked me about this. So typically, for example, in the United States, when all the food is brought to the table, your server will leave the check and say, I'll take this for you whenever you're ready. It's really the opposite here. You'll almost never find a server delivering your check to your table unless you ask for it. And the reason for that is out of respect for your dining party, because it's a very cultural tradition here to go out to eat is time when you're spending with your friends and family. And so it's culturally appropriate that you don't get the check brought automatically, because the wait staff wants to respect the fact that once you have that table, that's your time with your friends and family, and they don't want to make you feel rushed. So sometimes people who aren't aware of that might think, gosh, what is the service here? They're not bringing me my check. But what they're actually trying to do is really respect the fact that they don't want you to feel rushed. There will be very few exceptions to that. Some restaurants may have like that they have to turn tables, but they will let you know about that ahead of time. Generally speaking, once you've got that table, you have it for as long as you like. Tipping is also a question we get a lot. You do not need a tip here at restaurants. The wait staff works on a salary basis. They work for a living wage. They do not work for tips. So that being the case, do not feel obligated to leave a tip. It's not custom. You can leave if you were really pleased with your service. You might want to leave like €1 per person. It's up to you. What I want you to know though is it's not mandatory whatsoever. There's no reason to feel guilty or strange if you don't leave a tip, because locals generally don't leave tips because the wait staff works on a regular salary. When it comes to menus, I like to tell people a little bit about how to navigate the Italian dinner menu or lunch menu. So there's two different types of restaurants you're going to find. You're going to find the ristorante and a pizzeria. And the reason I tell you that is because a ristorante may or may not have pizza available, but a pizzeria will obviously specialize in pizza. So if you're really counting on trying a local Roman style pizza, which is a very thin crust, usually baked in a wood-fired oven, you're going to want to head to a pizzeria, which is a sit-down pizza restaurant, as opposed to Pizza al Taglio, which is also listed there on the bullet point. That's more of a street food pizza. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. First of all, though, at the restaurant, when you go to the restaurant, you're going to find, generally speaking, antipasto, primo and secondo, first course, second course. The antipasto are appetizers. Now, primo and secondo, you do not have to go through all the courses. You can order as you like. The primo is going to have your pasta dishes and any rice. If they serve a risotto, you'll find that there. The secondo is going to have all your meat dishes. You can mix and match. You can get one from both. You get a secondo and not a primo. The wait staff will ask your table if somebody's ordering just a primo or just a secondo. They'll ask, do you want me to bring it out at the same time so you're eating together? So just so that you know, you're not obligated to order all the courses. So at the pizzeria, one thing I do have here written, toppings, and the reason I have toppings written is because we don't pick our toppings here like we do, let's say, in the United States, where everyone just picks the toppings and shares the pizza. Pizzas here are ordered individually, so everyone's going to get their own individual pizza. But again, it's a very thin crust. It will come to you uncut and just there on the plate, and it will be pre-decided topping combinations on the menu. So margherita, for example, is your plain cheese pizza. But there's other different combinations of toppings that have specific names that you'll see on the menu. So you're going to order the combination that appeals to you the most, but you don't order with toppings like I want this and that and this. You have to order kind of based on what's available. Fritti means simply fried foods. Fried foods are very common appetizers at pizza restaurants. And supplì, which is written there in the parentheses, that's the food that you see in the lower right photo. It's a very Roman tradition, local specialty. You aren't likely to find it in other cities in Italy. It's similar to the arancino, which is down south, but it's not the same. So it's a fried rice ball. It has a meat sauce, a rice with meat sauce, and then they make it into a ball, and they put some mozzarella in the middle, and then they bread it, and then they deep fry it. And so the mozzarella in the middle gets really melty. And it's like a really good street food snack too. So when you go, when you're going around the city, you might also see Pizza al Taglio restaurants. So they're like street food pizza. You're going to see pizza under a glass counter. And the way that works is you're going to go in and tell them how much you want. They'll kind of gesture with their hands the amount, and you'll tell them how much you want. They're going to cut it to measure based on how much you want, and they're going to weigh it. And so you're going to pay by weight. And generally speaking, I would say you would spend between 5 to 7, maybe up to 10 if you're in a really, heavily touristy area. It's a little bit more expensive. So that's how the Pizza al Taglio works. You can take it away. They can put it in paper and you can eat it while you're walking. That's perfectly appropriate. You can also get it put in a box and take it to go. So those are kind of your main options for eating out. Last but not least, I want to talk to you about coffee, because I really don't want to see any of you guys going to Starbucks when you're here in the city. Okay, you can if you want, but it's a great chance for you to try our local coffee. And so where you get coffee is at Il Bar. That means the coffee bar. And the way it works is that you're going to pay first at the register, and then you're going to move over to the coffee counter with the receipt that you've got. You put your receipt down on the coffee counter, and the barista is going to ask you what you want and you order, or they'll just look at your receipt and see what you ordered. So that's one thing. One other thing that's important. So when you say cafe, you might be thinking, okay, I want a coffee. I'll say coffee is cafe. When an Italian hears cafe, what they understand is espresso. Okay. So if you order a cafe, they're going to give you a little tiny espresso shot. That's coffee here. That is coffee. If you want like an American style coffee, so like a mug of coffee or a cup of coffee, then you can order an Americano, and they're going to prepare with an espresso and add hot water to that. A big debate that people ask me about is the debate around cappuccino. Can I drink a cappuccino after dinner? So if you want to be super local, no, you're not going to order a cappuccino after dinner. Obviously, feel free to try. Some restaurants may not even have, if it's a really local restaurant, they may not even have milk. So if you're at like a touristy restaurant, they'll probably, knowing that you're foreigners, they'll probably even offer you a cappuccino after dinner because they know that's kind of a custom, maybe in the United States. But here, no Italian would ever order a cappuccino after dinner. We drink cappuccino for breakfast. And after dinner, if you want a coffee, then you'll order an espresso. And last but not least, I have a couple of the most famous places to get espresso on a list for you that I'm going to send out after the webinar. All right. Next, I'm going to pass it back over to Lorianne to talk to you about a few ways to get into the Colosseum and the Vatican.
Thank you. So we're hoping that you're going to be seeing all the great sites and landmarks while you're in Rome. So as a Primo member, you do get one free skip the line ticket of a $22 value, which gives you access to the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, and Palatine Hill. And we also offer guided tour of the Vatican. We have guided tour of the Colosseum. So although you get a free entrance ticket, you can also get a tour to which we can credit that free entrance ticket. And we also have wonderful walking tours of the rest of Rome. I recommend taking a look at our Rome Tour Pass if you're spending at least 2 full days in Rome. It includes all 3. So it includes a walking tour of Rome, it includes the Colosseum, and a Vatican tour. And if you choose one of these great tours, you do get a $100 refund for your first booking. And then you get 10% off of any subsequent tours, which is great as a member with us. And you can book these either on italiatours.com, or you can always email us if you have any questions or you need help booking. We're happy to help you. In terms of the time to book these tours, I always recommend booking ahead of time and not waiting until the last minute. That's especially valid for the Vatican, because it does tend to be very difficult to find availability, especially in high season. We also get a lot of frequent questions about the dress code. And as a general rule, if you're going to visit the Vatican, you want your knees and shoulders covered. That's a similar rule for all the very large cathedrals and duomos in Italy, not the smaller churches, but in general, it's good to have something to cover yourself with if you're going to be visiting these. And now I'll leave it again to Shelly to give you some local tips. Oh, I think we're missing one, maybe.
Do you want to talk
no,
about
it's me.
Italy
It's me, yeah.
Magazine? Okay.
Italy Magazine, perfect. So yeah, so another perk is that you as a Primo member, it includes an annual subscription to our Italy Magazine Premium, which is a $99 value. And we have special issues very often. One of our special issues was the Bellissimo from the Bellissimo magazine, the Lazio edition, and there was a Vatican edition as well. And all that information you can find within the community. We've already, I think, Shelly has added a lot of that information in there. And that's a really good perk of the membership, since it's the same exact price as the full membership, but you get so many other perks with that. So I definitely recommend taking a look.
Okay. So now we'll talk for a moment about some of the most common tourist traps and how you can avoid them. First of all, restaurants. So a couple of dead giveaways to a restaurant that is particularly geared only towards tourists is if you get a menu that has pictures, because obviously a local Roman does not need a picture of the pasta that they're ordering, they already know. And also what I'm calling promoters. A lot of times when you're downtown by the Pantheon or by the Colosseum, you're going to see people stationed out in front of the restaurant holding these menus and kind of trying to usher customers in. They're trying to drum up business. Local Roman restaurants obviously don't need to do that. So this doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily have a terrible meal at these restaurants. But what it does mean is the prices might be higher than, let's say, a local restaurant. The food might not be as good. You're in Rome, so you might as well take advantage of going to a true local restaurant rather than these touristy places. If you want to avoid them, those are a couple of tip-offs that will help you to avoid them. Next, a phenomenon that we have particularly here in Rome that is unique, and in fact, it relates to this photo you see in the top in the center. I took that photo myself right on by the Tiber River. Here was a gladiator coming home from work one day. There are gentlemen that dress up as gladiators that are in front of the Colosseum, and they're there for the tourists who want to take pictures with them. And if you want to get a souvenir photo with the gladiator, be my guest. You're more than welcome to do that. The only reason I put it here in tourist traps is because what I would recommend that you do is make sure you agree on a price before you take the photo to avoid any unpleasant surprises if they're going to try to gouge you on the price. I personally have never asked any of the gladiators how much they charge. I looked online and it seems like 10 euros seems to be the going rate. But it's just kind of buyer beware if that's something that you want to do. And just to let you know, that is something that they're going to charge you for. Sometimes people think, oh, look how fun. They're just going to be friendly and let me take a picture with them. Well, no, they're trying to make a living doing that. So another thing is this gentleman in the lower right corner you see with a big bunch of roses. This is more typical in nightlife areas like Trastevere in the evenings. They'll go around with these big bunches of roses, and a tactic that they use is they'll try to place one in your hand and say, look, it's a gift. And of course, it's not a gift. They're trying to get money. But I think the psychology behind it is once it's in your hand, they're kind of betting on the fact that you're going to feel obligated to then pay for it. Really easy to avoid. Just keep walking. Don't feel like you're being rude. They've got plenty of other tourists that they can target. Or if you want to purchase a rose, feel free. I don't know what they cost, but you can make sure you ask before you get one so that you're not gouged there as well. Also, there's plenty of fresh flower stands all over the city. So if you really want to buy somebody a flower, I would recommend that you go to a flower stand. They're open until late. So last but not least, I hope that you're going to love and try our gelato. 2 tips to avoid very commercial and not authentic, more touristy oriented type of gelato. If you see gelato like you're going to see, like you see in this picture, which you will see downtown, if it's super overflowing the top, then that's a sure sign that they've whipped it up with lots of air to kind of make it look impressive, but it's not really the most authentic possible gelato. Any gelataio worth his or her salt would not present you with a gelato like this. So overflowing tubs, avoid. There's plenty of gelato shops that aren't geared necessarily towards tourists. Or if you're seeing like these neon bright colors, that's a sure sign that it's artificially colored. So you can avoid that. Fruit colors should be very light because they're using actual fruit. Next, a couple of my local tips for Rome, last but not least. So here in Rome, we have these water fountains throughout the city. They're called nazzoni, which means big noses, because they're talking about the spigot, the way the spigot is shaped. And it's a nickname for these fountains. So as the picture shows, these fountains have water running constantly. You don't have to push a button or anything. It's just water coming from a deep underground spring. It comes out ice cold. It's especially nice in the summer. Now it's a little chillier, but in any case, you don't have to buy plastic bottles. You can bring your own reusable water bottle and refill at any of these fountains that you're going to find all throughout the city. And in my list of resources that I'm going to email to you, I also have a link for an app, which is the public water utility here in Rome. They've developed an app to help you locate the water fountains throughout the whole city, so you'll know where your next water refill is coming from. Oh, one last tip that I almost forgot. If you want to be super local, you can push your thumb on the bottom of that spigot. There's a tiny little hole. You can't see it in the photo, but there's a tiny little hole on the top. And what happens is the back pressure makes the water come out of that little hole. And so it's like a way that you can bend down to drink directly from the fountain if you don't have a bottle. Just make sure you don't spray somebody who's walking by. That's a tip. I have been known to do that on occasion. Let's see, the very last thing here, have an aperitivo. I don't know if you've ever heard about the aperitivo. It's becoming quite iconic, the Aperol Spritz, which you see in the photo. An aperitivo is a nice tradition. It starts around 6:30. There are certain places like this place that I recommend that I will send you the link to. So for about 10 euros, you can get a drink. It doesn't have to have alcohol. It can or may not. The traditional aperitivo drinks are quite low alcohol because it's a before dinner drink. So it's just something to kind of whet your appetite before you eat your dinner. Although, as you can see in this photo, some of them are very abundant and could actually double as dinner themselves. But I would encourage you to try that local custom. It's a lot of fun. So that wraps up the informational presentation of our webinar. Like I said before, you're going to receive an email because you registered. I have your email. I'm going to send you an email that has links to the resource list I was referring to. It's going to have a recap of the Q&A that we're about to hold, and it will also have a link to the recording of this webinar. If you want, before you get the email, if you want to check out the resource list, you can also do that in our community because it will be listed there. It's at italiapass.com. Just click community and then go to the Ready for Rome orientation on the left sidebar, and it's under Italy travel planning. You can find the list on your own there. All right, so at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we will go into the Q&A. So if you have a question, just simply type it into the Q&A box and Lorianne and I will go through the questions one by one with you. All right, I'll let you take this first one since it relates to the Primo membership.
Perfect. Do you have any family discount for multiple Primo memberships for members of the same family? So it all depends. If you are staying in Rome and you make Rome your home base and you take day trips, which we do offer as tours as well, what I usually suggest is to get what we call a companion membership, which is $45, and you get access to the free Colosseum ticket. You do get some other perks. However, if you're going to be booking a lot of tours and a lot of train tickets, what I suggest is getting multiple of the same memberships. Depending on what you've already booked, you might be offered different types of memberships just so that you don't double pay for things. But it's all explained on our website on Italia Pass Primo, italiapass.com. So that's what I suggest doing. Getting multiple memberships if you're going to get a lot of services, or getting a companion membership if you just want the Colosseum option and some of our other perks.
Okay, so the next question asks, do you have any tips for fun things to do in Rome with small children, like 7 years old, other than monuments and museums? This is a great question. I have a list that I've developed because other members have asked this in the past. So I will include that in our Q&A recap. I'll give you a list. It'll go down and list all the different options. One off the top of my head that people really like is we have a very nice children's museum here in Rome. It's called Explora, and that's a fun thing for kids to do. It's kind of just a typical children's museum with a lot of hands-on exhibits and things that kids can do. And so that's one suggestion, but there are others, and I will include those in the Q&A recap that I send out. Maybe I'll take the next one since I'm
Yes.
local. It says, should we bring clothes for snow? Certainly in Rome, you don't need to worry about snow, although it did snow about 10, 12 years ago. That was kind of a fluke, though. It doesn't generally snow here in Rome. Of course, if you're going to be traveling up north, you'll definitely want to bring clothes for snow. So I guess the answer to that is it really depends on what cities you'll be visiting. But certainly in Rome, we generally don't get snow. It generally is sunny pretty much every day. November's a rainy month, but December and the rest of winter is generally pretty dry and just cold, humid. It's a humid cold, so you do want to bring layers, dress warm.
Does covering knees at the Vatican mean no shorts for men or women? Do you know about this, or because I think it does?
Yeah, no shorts. In fact, they have like these people that are checking when you're going in. So it's not that you can kind of sneak by. One thing I've seen people do in the summer, there's these cargo pants that have a zip off bottom. And so I've seen people in the summer wearing shorts and then kind of zipping the bottom part back on. But yeah, you're going to want to wear full length pants to visit the inside of St. Peter's Basilica, and women, you're going to want to have skirts that cover your knees. How can we easily find public restrooms in Rome? Good question. So public restrooms are not very common here in Rome. And by that, I mean an actual like facility that's just a public restroom. That's not a very common thing. Other European cities like Amsterdam, for example, they have these public toilets where you can pay like 50 cents and go through a turnstile. That's not so common here in Rome. The best thing to do, what locals do, is if you need to use a restroom, then go to any coffee bar, purchase something small, like a bottle of water, which will generally run you €1, or a pack of gum. And once you purchase something, I don't know if you can hear that siren. There's a loud siren.
No.
Okay, there's a loud Roman siren out my window. Once you purchase something small, then that's a courtesy to be able to use the bar's restroom, because the bar is required to have a public restroom, but it's for their customers only. One other thing, kind of to tag on to this advice, do carry pocket tissues in your backpack or your purse, because it's not always guaranteed that you're going to find toilet paper in the restroom. So it's always just a good thing to keep with you as you travel around the city.
My wife and I are coming with our 20 and 18-year-old daughters. If we get individual premium memberships and we do a tour, will it be $100 off of each tour? Can you order the tour as a foursome? And yes. So absolutely. If you are all taking the same tour, we can either apply all of your $100 off to one tour. Or if you're going to do multiple tours and you prefer to have it spread out, that's also a possibility. You just need to reach out to us, let us know what you'd like to do. Your 10%, however, will only be one for subsequent tours. If you buy more than one and you want to apply your 10% as Primo members, it's only going to be 10% per tour.
Okay, next question asks, how about Pisa and Venice? Is it also warm? So here, warm depends on what you mean by warm. I don't think you're going to find many places in Italy that are actually warm during the winter, unless you're going down south. So, but even then, it's kind of like, how do you define warm? Because say, for example, you're going to the Amalfi Coast. Warm on the Amalfi Coast during the winter, during daytime temperatures range between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, it drops down to in the 40s Fahrenheit. So pretty much everywhere you go is going to be a little chilly. As you go further north, chillier. And of course, it's easy to just look those temperatures up, but the best way is just to bring layers, but do bring a warm coat in the winter.
Is there any one day? I'll let you maybe take this one as
Yeah,
well.
it's public transport. Is there any one-day pass for public transport which can be used unlimited? Yes. I didn't talk about this in the presentation because a lot of times people don't actually use these because Rome is such a walkable city. And now that the temperatures aren't so sweltering, people mostly just the historic center is very walkable and very small compared to other large European cities. So people do a lot of walking. However, if you have limited mobility or you're going to be using the public transport a lot, then there's three options. There's a 24-hour unlimited, 48-hour, and I believe 72-hour are the options. There might be a week. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I will include all the options in our Q&A recap so that you can explore the different prices and just calculate how many trips you think you're going to take. And that's how you can determine whether or not it's a good value for you. All right, so that's the end of the questions that have been submitted. So I guess that will wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for attending our webinar. And if you have any more questions, please join us over at our ItaliaPass community, where I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. And have a wonderful trip to Italy. Buon viaggio to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Happy travels.